Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to maybe our third 2020 episode of the Rally Podcast. We got Mike White here alongside Shaun Boyer and Logan Cornelius. Truthfully, COVID hit us and was like, hey, you guys can take a break from podcasting. There's not much Roundnet going on. But truth be told, there was kind of a lot of Roundnet going on. So this podcast is brought to you by Andrew Gassaway because he pushed us to get back and record another episode. And of course, we were also pushed by the wonderful news of the IRF and the USA Roundnet Association and all that stuff. So we're going to dive into mostly kind of those today. And what we're going to start off with is the IRF. So do either one of you want to give a quick 30-second summary of the IRF and that announcement?
Sure.
Logan.
Yeah, IRF, basically a international federation, like in the title, to govern the sport of Roundnet globally. It's kind of a necessary piece in order to reach the Olympics. Every sport that's in the Olympics, there's an international federation that kind of governs the sport globally, and that's made up of national governing bodies, which are basically, like, as we know them, RROs, that govern the sport in that country. So it's a big first step in uniting the sport globally and into getting to the Olympics.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of the big overarching thing is the path towards the Olympics. Maybe we can get there in 2040, 2050, 2060. We'll see. Maybe 2022. No, that's the Winter Olympics, isn't it? But I think that's the big thing, and that's the big push of the IRF is getting in line with the Olympic system and the kind of the way they do it.
Yeah. And I'm a big system guy when it comes to Roundnet and like developing systems and get them and going and so I'm excited to see how this develops.
I think it's a great step forward. I will admit early on when I was like most passionate about playing Roundnet, I was always skeptical, like one day we're going to get to the Olympics, like that's far-fetched, but a great dream. And so it's cool when we're taking these small yet big steps towards that dream. Because I still think there's a lot of people out there that like look at the sport and look at the product and like, yeah, it's not going to the Olympics, sorry guys. But we're here to prove them wrong, and I think we're making the right moves to go down that road, which is cool.
Shout out to Jack Scotty and everyone involved with that because that was a huge project taking it together. And I think the kind of thing, the initial reaction I had is really it's just the coolest thing. And I think we already were getting there kind of with, or you said RROs, registered Roundnet organizations all over the world. But kind of this is part of like putting together these organized systems. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for Worlds this year, we're planning to have Worlds in 2020, to participate, you had to have an official governing body. I could be incorrect. Maybe I'm thinking of kind of college and you have to have an official club. But, right, this IRF means it's not just you have players in this country. You have like a whole organized an organization and a governing body and members and all of these things that, so having this high level organization will actually the trickle-down effect, trickle-down economics will force these other countries and places to organize their own systems and own organizations. So it should help them grow even faster.
Yeah, it's gonna create a lot more like professionality like within the sport. I think there's a lot of very much like informal organizations, informal groups, whether it's like at a national level or just like a local level. Just a lot of informal groups, and I think the sport takes that next step is when all of these informal groups start to take it seriously and kind of like, hey, like let's run such and such organization as a business. And that's a mindset that I've kind of had for the last year or so in doing everything with Taser. But I think that's an important thing that, like you said, like, it's going to trickle down with the IRF forming and like these official NGBs. There's going to be a lot more like formality in a lot of groups. And that's going to help push it to another level in a lot of different areas, locally, globally, nationally.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting.
Well, yeah, and we're on the trend with hopefully more tournaments down the road that are international and that need that uniform rules and structure and rankings. And so building that out across not just the US as we have over the last however many years, but now on a global scale is, I think, going to just expedite the process.
Right.
Don't want a global instance of the Harvard tournament.
Yeah, one country shows up and they're like, all right, we're allowed to set picks, right?
So, I mean, so that's a good point. So, like, do you think there will be issues amongst countries and members of the IRF for contesting rules?
I think the simple answer. Oh, I'll say. I think the simple answer is yes, but I think at a small degree, and that's the point of the IRF. But
Right.
Logan, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I kind of am on the same page where it's like there are going to be differences, but I don't think there will be anything too grand. I think once people, the way the sport has developed up to this point, like now it's like very much like a phenomenon. Like people are seeing it, they're learning, and if you're at the point where you're making like a national organization, like you're probably following the sport in like its highest level, and you're seeing how it's played, and you're probably aware. So there may be some differences within within different countries, but I think for the most part, like there's going to be a lot of agreed upon. I think what will come is like the direction of the sport. Like, hey, what changes should we make? I think there's going to be a lot of different viewpoints on how that will happen in the future. So like future rule changes may cause a lot more discrepancy than current and past.
So something I'm a bit, and truthfully, Jack Scotty, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry that I don't know all the ins and outs of how the IRF will govern. But, right, a lot of times here, right, on the SRA board and with the SRA, we change the rules very sequentially and based on current problems, where on a global scale, those problems may not exist in every different ecosystem. So, for example, the U.S. could be like, hey, we need to fix whatever this is. Maybe that's the serving rule, the serving line. There could be tons of players in a different country, even just in Canada, that are like, no, we think it's perfect as is because of how they play or the style, or even just a lot of times we see with development where, we weren't worried about rallies until, 2016 or so, or not as much.
Yourself, Mike White.
What?
So speak for yourself, Mike
Oh,
White.
yeah. Back in 2013, Logan was upset. Is that what you're saying? Or are you still not worried? I'm just saying,
maybe not 2013. Yeah. That might be a little too early.
But, so that's what kind of what I'm thinking about, right? How do you think about these rules kind of on a grand scale? How do each problems, right? If one country is having an issue with this rule and other countries aren't, how do we kind of manage that? Is it just, hey, these are the rules we're using?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I do think the U.S. has represented this sort of guiding light or the gold standard of like not only play, but setting rules and events up. And so the politics of how that may affect or not affect the decisions made through the IRF and out of the countries. But I totally hear you, Mike, because some countries will just be ahead of other countries. But I guess we will need a standard, or like, if you want to come compete in this event that we consider the World Championship, you're gonna have to follow these guidelines. So you might as well play with them regularly.
Yeah. And I also think that like, I don't think the sport is, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I don't think the sport's dynamic enough to where when everyone's playing at the top level, there's going to be that much difference in style of play to be like, oh, this needs to be the rule change. There may be like differences like people's ability and what they exceed at, but like, I guess it would be called like the meta of the game. I think as it increases and people are on the same skill level, I think it's going to be like, it's going to be the same issues across the board. But like, I guess issues may pop up when people are different skill levels and we're like, hey, like our players don't want to play like this. That may be where the issues, but I don't think it's dynamic enough to where there's going to be like vastly different issues depending on play style in different countries.
Right. And I think that's probably a good thing you could just reflect on currently. When the SRA releases the new rules every year, are there certain groups that are like, I don't get it, or I don't think that should exist? Because truthfully, the SRA is solving problems that other things may not have. And so they may be correct. Maybe they're now preventing a problem from occurring, but when it happens, it's a bit, it could be a bit confusing. But anyway, I kind of want to move on to a similar topic, which was how will you rank all of the world? Because we have a hard enough time ranking people in the U.S. With the SRA points, got the power ranking if you care about that. But how do you think you could go about ranking on a global scale?
I mean, I feel like with any ranking system, like it has to start with interconnectivity. Like if everyone's playing in their own bubble, the best you can do to rank is like watch them play and be like, okay, like I think they would kind of match up here. But I think a key to the whole system is going to be like international play. Like I don't think you can have a very solid international ranking system if you don't have international play. So I think that's going to be a huge part to getting that going, is like creating, even if it's just like 1 or 2 tournaments a year, maybe there becomes some kind of world tournament series, which would be pretty awesome. It gives me an excuse. Oh yeah, I have to go to Europe. My bad. But yeah, like that's going to be pretty important to like encourage international play, and that's when you can start to build that like global ranking system.
I almost think of it as like there'll be country or regional country tour series that then lead to a world championship like we're talking about, but you can earn points within your country to get like a somewhat comparison in points of how you've performed in your space. But I guess that won't mean much until you actually go and face off against some of these teams from other countries. But yeah, it's really hard unless we're actually all getting in the same place and playing.
Like
you got it.
Sorry, I was just gonna say real quick, like much like take like college football and the rankings, like those rankings are done by like voters. So I think like in the like it has to be done with like voting somehow. Like you can have points and stuff, but I think it's just so hard to use like a unbiased point system. Like there's just so many factors to it in that. So I think there has to be some sort of like voting to it.
And I was going to say, it kind of really depends on where we're looking at. In the U.S., the U.S. could go to, as far as close proximity, the U.S. is fighting Canada and Mexico, right? But in Europe, if you're in Europe, Euros is as feasible, I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, as our nationals, right? As far as like people traveling from all over the thing. So, Europe world rankings or world global rankings within Europe are possible, and maybe US and Europe interacts a little bit, so you can kind of get somewhat of a gist of it. But I also bring up the other question of like, do global rankings matter as much? Or could it be every country has their own rankings and then we do worlds and that's it? It doesn't matter if mid-season 2022, like US is 1, Canada's 2, Germany 3, Peru's 4. What matters is the 2024 worlds. And every group does their own stuff in between, and you could have some world tournaments if you want, but the big emphasis, similar to the Olympics, is on worlds.
I don't think international rankings necessarily matter, but they're just so fun. Like you got to have them. You can't not have international rankings. I don't know if like those rankings will mean anything, but like the PR rankings don't mean anything, other than just like you can say, hey, I was ranked here. Mm-hmm. But like international rankings, like in every sport, it's like so fun to look at those and see how teams compare, even if they don't have the competitive meaning. Like I feel like just for the sake of culture and discussing it and talking about it, like it's kind of cool.
Yeah, people will always speculate. I mean, we could argue that even the US rankings don't matter, but it's just fun to be a part of and to consider.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's cool. So I want to segue kind of in the other thing we were going to talk about today, unless you guys have more IRF stuff to talk about, but this is kind of an extension, which is USA Roundnet. So right alongside the IRF creation, which was the governing body for the World Roundnet, the USA Roundnet was formed as the nonprofit governing body for Roundnet in the U.S. and that's great. But alongside that, right, what comes with that responsibility is selecting the national team for Worlds in hopefully the end of 2021. So we get to talk a bit about just USA Roundnet in general, but the kind of thing I wanted to spitball about was how we select for Worlds, how we could do so realistically, and also just kind of if we could do whatever we want, what would we want to do? And I have some other thoughts to bring up too.
Let's start with what we were originally going to do this year, right? So we were going to have 4 qualifying tournaments that would take the top team and give them a bid along with the previous national champions. The 5 teams total. So you're saying, how do we adjust that moving forward in this new environment? That's what I wondered. I could see them falling back on a very similar structure.
Yep. So let's talk. Did you like the outline this year? Did you think it kind of made sense, given how it was supposed to happen?
I thought it was going to be a fair way for pretty much all teams to have a shot that wanted a shot, without diving too much into like a subjective or popular vote nature that it could have gone. But I don't know. I think there's definitely more creative ways that we could put a spin on it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, with that, like, they could create a more in-depth kind of way to do it, where it's like, I feel like the other way, it's just, with such a small sample size to get a few teams, I think finding a way to get teams on a more in-depth basis could help. I don't necessarily have the answer. I haven't thought about it enough to give that answer. But yeah, like, I feel like one tournament to get on the team is just, I tie stakes, I guess, but it doesn't necessarily always. There's been plenty of times where one team has won a tournament. And
what about a one-day triple elim tournament?
You didn't say single elimination, so I'm out.
All right. Something I kind of wanted to get into, right? Last year was going to be based off of these tournament wins, right? Win the tournament and qualify. Do you think there is merit in some subjective committee selection process? As in maybe at the end of the year, or when it's due, it's not based on just who won. Maybe there's 3 tournaments, and based on those, I guess you could do a points based on that, or it's just, I think these guys should be on the team. Maybe there's only 2 tournaments, and it's not whoever got first and second. It's the winners, and then maybe there's one team that got second and fourth or something like that. Do you think there should be some sort of subjectivity to it, or do you think you should keep it 100% objective based off results?
I think that there's definitely value in some subjectivity. I think that maybe even more so, since this is going to be the first World Championship, the first team to represent the US, we kind of are leaning more that way because of it. And what also could be at play here is we're very confident in a lot of our players to win, that we don't feel like we have to nail down to like the best of the best what we have to offer. It's a tricky question though. It can go both ways. Maybe I could see a combination working, but then I try to imagine 10, 20 years down the road when we've had X amount of world championships and we have a really sort of clean structure and season. Objectively, we probably have a pretty fine-tuned way to pick these teams out or select them, right?
Right.
We should.
Right, it's a little different because we can have tournaments and we can figure it out, but right, other sports with more players, right, they're not having tryouts, are they? Right, for the NBA the Olympic basketball team, are they having tryouts or are they just picking people?
True. But I mean, like,
but it's different. It's different games, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But right.
Well, I think there's merit. I think there's merit to both. Like, I mean, take like the college football like playoff. I mean, it's kind of, it's subjective. Like they moved away. They had a completely objective system, and everyone's like, this is stupid. We hate this. Like this doesn't actually work. And so now it's a subjective system, and everyone's like, hey, you're not picking the teams that you should sometimes. So I think you're not going to find a perfect way, and there's merit in both. And I think there's definitely, and I think it comes down to like the people choosing, if it comes down subjective, because I think there's very much like a tendency in like the community for like the nasty effect is what I'll call it. Like someone's like they post on Facebook, oh, this person's nasty, and then all of a sudden everyone's ranking them as the number one player in the world, just because they're popular on Facebook. So like very much comes down to like, I think come down to like analyzing players and doing that, and maybe a mixture of both. But I don't think there really is a true answer. I don't think really in any sport someone's come up with like, oh, this is how you do it, because the reality is there's not really a right answer to choose the top teams, unless like sometimes it's just like very clear. It's like, okay, yeah, like these are very clearly the top couple of teams, and that's when it's easy. When it's rarely that easy.
Right.
What if we had the USA Roundnet board hand select like the coaching staff for whatever the teams can be, and then the coaching staff gets to get together and compile a list that year?
Shaun, that is exactly what I wanted to say, right? So what if there was a position? Maybe we do have a tournament, and the top 8 get to go to some. They're in the selection process, but there's a couple coaches, and I think the big thing also in here that I was thinking of is they aren't picking teams. They aren't like, let's have CS and let's have Boisterous and let's have Mammal. They're like, you know what? I think Caleb and PJ, they could do it, and like they're putting people together. They're just figuring out, and they're just picking their top men and women and trying to make the best teams possible. I think that kind of would be pretty interesting. You got to, of course, be careful of how biases work, but sometimes like that may be, depending right in the scale, maybe 20 years from now, that's like, hey, the number one team that we have to beat is this team. Their weakness is their hitting. That means we're going with 10 defensive players this year. We don't care if you're the best hitter in the game. Where we make our money this year is on defensive ups. So that's who we're going for.
If in 20 years people are defensive ups are where it's at, you know what?
You're good. You're good.
I'll be satisfied if that's the future. I need to hear no more.
They're getting one instead. They're getting 2 instead of 1. But I thought that could be pretty cool.
No, I think you're right. Once it shakes out more and it gets like each year it gets more competitive on the international front, I think those types of decisions to just get the best pairs together on our team, because it'll be coveted to win that championship. We're going to do everything in our power, I think, to make that happen.
Right, and sorry, I just kind of blanked on how the format would work, but kind of what I was thinking of is, how do we determine, right, those A team, B team, C team, D team? Maybe it's right the coach is picking them. At some point we probably won't have like an individual tournament that seeds for, or just an individual tournament, or that's something that seeds for the team tournament. It's just going to be, hey, these are the people you're playing, and these are your matchups. And, of course, we're thinking way ahead. We haven't needed the first World Championship, but I'm just getting excited kind of thinking about it.
You know what we've done? We've solved the issue of how we pick the team, but we've created a new issue. How do we pick the coaches?
That's a good point.
It's basically the same issue. See, I'm not necessarily on the board with the whole let's pick the coaches thing.
You're all in on it. Oh, let's have the coaches play in a tournament.
Yeah.
The team that wins the tournament are the 2 coaches.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think there's only been one. Has Skylar been like the only certified coach?
It depends how you define certified.
Posted on Instagram.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did sit on the bench for the A&M National Championship game. Give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That was on national television. So.
Strong resume.
Strong resume. That's pretty good. But truthfully, going back to it, I think the way they were going to do them this year was great. And I think that'll totally work for how it is next year if that's the way that it kind of shapes out. But it is very fun to daydream about different situations and different things we can do. And I really kind of, I think the biggest thing out of this is I kind of love the individual aspect of it. I think it'd be so fun.
You say that
Yeah.
you like the individual aspect? Is that what you
Well,
said?
because I think it would be more of a, not that they wouldn't get excited on like being Team USA, but imagine if it was like all mashups. Like it's like this is Team USA, like what they're playing together, and of course, probably bad idea. They have less chemistry, but I think it would be so cool.
Yeah, it might be cool.
It might be.
That's what I'll say. It might be cool.
I think it'd be cool. I'm with you, Mike. I think it should be an individual basis.
I think there's just some times where it's like, well, I mean, it could be an individual basis. So it's like, hey, we're gonna pick these two individuals and they're gonna play as a team. But it's like sometimes there's players who are good. There's two players who are good and they don't necessarily mash up well together. But then you get two players that have matching strengths and they play well together.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why we have good coaches, Logan. And we have a boot camp.
You should get that.
All 16 players go to a boot camp and the coach puts them together and it's cutthroat. It's like Miracle. It's like Miracle. It's we wrote the script, Logan.
Dang. Now we just need a Russian team.
Yeah. If guys, let us know if there was a movie and America was. I guess we would probably be the Russians, and it'll be some other country that trains and takes the U.S. out.
We played these.
The
guys.
U.S. is over here. They're just picking their top teams from tournaments. Belarus over here. Shout out to any Belarus players. They're over here. Crafting players, crafting teams, strategies, working them from the ground up with coaches in a boot camp, and they're coming in here and they're wiping the floor with us. They're playing against Boisterous. They got a plan for Boisterous.
We play these guys 10 times. They may beat us 9, but not this one. Not tonight. Tonight we spike with them. Tonight we stay with them and we shut them down.
Wow.
All right, Logan, you're hired, man. You're the coach.
That was my tryout. So.
Wow. Awesome.
Nailed it.
Cool. Well, our time on this free Zoom call is winding down, so I think that's a good point to wrap up. So cool. Again, shout out to Andrew Gasaway pushing us. Shout out to Jack and everyone involved with the IRF and USA Roundnet putting this together and giving us something exciting to talk about.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more frequent with Gasaway lighting the fire behind us, getting us going. So we all like doing it. So
we all like doing it, but sometimes you just kind of forget, and then all of a sudden it's been, 7 months and you haven't done a podcast.
We're back, baby. We're back.
That's right.
We're back for the 4th time again. Thank you all for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. I read that if you say that, people are more likely to do it. So please do it.
You're supposed to say smash that like.
Smash that spike that like button. Thank you for listening / watching, and we'll hope to see you soon. Peace out.
Bye.